Hi everyone. Today, guess what? Surprise, surprise. I'm doing yet another video talking about everything wrong with It Happened to Nancy by the late fraud Dr. Beatrice Sparks. This one is focusing solely on the medical misinformation and outdated information about HIV and AIDS. It's primarily found in the back matter, but some of it is scattered throughout the book, and this isn't intended to be an exhaustive list. I know I probably most definitely missed some of the misinformation throughout the book, but there's so many things wrong with this book, every single level, like every single thing you could imagine. It's, kind of easy to skip over or not realize that was misinformation because there's just so much wrong with this book. I just cannot state it enough, and I'm going to try to film several what's wrong with Nancy videos today, so you will be seeing the same outfit in the successive videos about everything wrong with it. So let's just start ripping this apart again. If Dr. Fraud truly wanted to educate teens on AIDS and influence them to avoid potential risks, she sure as hell went about it in all the wrong ways. Even the updated back matter published a decade later in, I think, 2005, this new edition it contains falsehoods. And some of it was incorrect, even at the original publication. Number 51, the numbered list is continuing off of my last from the numbered list from Everything Wrong with It Happened to Nancy. Most egregiously of all, she lied to Avon Books about the CDC approving the medical information about AIDS. This is discussed later on in Rick Emerson's excellent book, Unmasked Alice, which I am currently rereading. It's just gobsmacking to see everything this woman got away with, and I can kind of understand a little bit. This was obviously pre-internet. She was publishing most of her books, or the internet did exist in the 90s, obviously, but it wasn't like it was today. You couldn't instantly start fact checking. Oh, she claims she has a PhD now. Oh, I'm just going to let that claim stand. Oh, she claims she went to YBU and UCLA and has doctorates and masters from there. Oh, not going to check up that. Just going to take her at her word. Oh, she says the CDC approved it. We're going to totally accept that. But it's just, people should have done more fact checking, even in the pre-internet era. It's just absolutely shocking she was allowed to pull the wool over everyone's eyes and commit literary fraud in broad daylight for decades. She pretended the doctor's note must have gotten lost in the mail, then claimed in a communication that everything was approved. Nope, no one from the CDC saw it before publication. That's just, I'm completely shocked. I'm lost for words about how unethical and shady that was. This woman just gets worse and worse. Number 52. It's been well established for years that flushing tampons down the toilet is a very bad idea and can lead to clogged pipes. They're designed to expand upon contact with fluids. Obviously, I shouldn't have to explain why, which is happening big time in pipes. Also, why specify Tampax? She also specifies that in Go Ask Allison. I don't know off the top of my head if she specifies the brand in any of her other books, but it's just yet another sign she was out of touch. And Tampax was the only brand I knew about back in the day, so therefore that must still be the only brand still in, marketing, because I haven't had a period in decades. I'm not up with what's going on right now. There were other brands on the market by the 90s. And on a side note, I'm shocked Dr. Fraud approved of teen girls using tampons with her fanatical abstinence-only crusade. And terrible things will automatically happen to you if you let a gentleman into your boudoir 1 second before marriage. Oh, tampons will take your precious maidenhood. I'm really, really shocked she was totally nonchalant in approving of teenage unmarried virgin girls using tampons. Number 53. There are several ways I'm interpreting the line, "It is so sad to see a young boy have to wear Kotex pads because of rectal ulcers, and none of them are good." Knowing Dr. Fraud, she thought it was humiliating and emasculating for a boy to do something only meant for females. And again, why single out Kotex? There were so many other sanitary pads on the market by that time. Off the top of my head, I'm thinking of Always and Stay Free and a bunch of others, for example. Generic store brands as well. She could have just said tampons and pads like any normal person. Number 54. Norplant was withdrawn from the U.S. market in 2002, and the last ones still in circulation were used up in 2004. That Q&A is now outdated, and most younger readers have probably never heard of Norplant, a birth control implant. I think there might be something similar to that, or maybe I'm just thinking of like the ring like women wear, which steadily like slowly releases hormones to prevent conception, which is kind of similar to an IUD, only like somewhat less invasive, and you can like remove it like yourself and do it like sooner if you don't want it in for like 7 to 10 years. But off the top of my head, I just like can't think of any like birth control implant device that's currently very popular like Norplant was back in the day. So again, that information was pretty much outdated as soon as the new edition hit the market. Number 55. What's the point of citing a 2001 survey if you're not going to update the supposed medical information? By 2001, most people no longer died within 2 years of HIV advancing to AIDS. And this new updated edition wasn't even published in 2001. It was, I think, 2004. Yeah, it was 2005. So that was definitely even more outdated by the time the update came along. Miraculously, HIV patients now have almost a full average lifespan, so long as they start taking antiretrovirals ASAP. Even people with AIDS can now live for 10 years or more. That really is a miracle because, when I was a child, I remember when AIDS was an automatic death sentence, and we had wonderful education on AIDS in my upper elementary school, grades 4, 5, and 6 by the school nurse, who also taught us sex ed. And what I came to realize in much hindsight, decades later, was pretty like radical and liberal and open-minded for the era. It wasn't like graphic telling people exactly how to have sex and about like sexual mechanics and all the stuff that's totally inappropriate for that age, but it was about honesty, about birth control, different types of sex in a general way, like how to prevent like pregnancy and STDs and sorts of things like that. It was just, stay abstinent until you're married. Nothing bad will happen if you're abstinent, but if you do have sex outside of marriage, you're automatically going to have your life ruined by unwanted pregnancy, and you'll die of AIDS, and you'll be completely maimed by gonorrhea and chlamydia and syphilis and hepatitis and all these other diseases out there. So so many people just need to do a better job of educating young people about HIV and AIDS. But anyway, I realized people were working on a cure and better drugs and such back then, but I couldn't have conceived back then in the early 90s, like almost 35 years ago, when we were having these classes. That would one day come a day when people with HIV and AIDS, they could realistically, like frequently be expected to live all the way into their 70s, maybe even their 80s, as long as they started taking certain drugs and took those drugs properly and religiously, like almost as soon as they could after getting the diagnosis. And now people like Magic Johnson are the exception. The rule instead of the like strange exception. Most people are no longer automatically dying of AIDS, at least in the Western world. I know we do need to work on like better education and prevention and drug treatment and such outside of the West in the developing world. Number 56. Dr. Sparks giving Nancy as many AIDS-related complications as possible reminds me of how I used to think people using drugs got every single side effect during the same trip, and I actually wrote that in the stories I was writing as a preteen and in my early teens. Highly unlikely, and a very childish misunderstanding of how diseases work. But hey, she did the same thing in Go Ask Alice. As soon as Alice she's tricked, and of course, because she has no free will or moral agency, just like all of the characters in Dr. Fraud stories. But so when she's tricked into drinking this spiked, the acid-laced Coke at a party, this is a really cool trip. Now I must get my hands on every single drug in existence, and within a week or so I'm already selling LSD to 10-year-olds at an elementary school, and I'm stealing my grandpap's sleeping medication and tranquilizers, and I've got to get a buzz, I've got to do all these drugs under the sun. She did not understand how drugs work either, but obviously that's a whole thing for its separate video, and I am planning a video on Go Ask Alice, which I'm finally reading now, and it's just such badly written, absolute garbage and tripe. It was definitely bad anti-drug propaganda written by someone who just had no idea what drugs were really all about. Number 57. Since when does the medical profession consider condoms unreliable just because they're not a 100% guarantee against pregnancy and STDs? What? When used properly, they're very close to 100%. It's not that hard, no pun intended, to learn how to store and use them correctly. Dr. Fraud reiterates the scaremongering when two girls Nancy knows, I think a year or so older than she is at the time, Kelly and Belinda, get knocked up despite supposedly using condoms. It's like she's sending teens a message that condoms can't be trusted under any circumstances and you should always live in terror and fear and paranoia that they're going to fail and oh no, your life could be ruined by pregnancy and AIDS and oh, you'll automatically die or you'll have to give the baby up because of course you're just a stupid single mom. You can't really take care of a baby. Babies are horrific and only adults want to deal with things like diaper blowouts and vomiting and waking up in the middle of the night. So why even bother trying to prevent pregnancy and STDs? Just wait for marriage like a good little Molly Mormon and Peter Priesthood. And oh, I absolutely hate Nancy's boyfriend Lou, the fanatically pro-abstinence red flag leaking. Oh, I knew sex was bad from the time I was 10 years old and I knew I would never have it until the very second I was married because I knew it ruined my family. And just, I hate Lou so much. I just want to punch him in the face. I hated him during my third reading 15 or so years ago and I hate him even more now. Just probably one of my absolute least favorite fictional boyfriends ever. Just, oh, I hate him so much. Number 58. How prudish, sheltered, and outdated do you have to be to recommend freaking KY as a lubricant? Ew. Astroglide is where it's at. There are also lots of other awesome lubes on the market these days. Way better than hideous KY. But again, Molly Morgbot, she wouldn't know what's current or she thinks sex is a mortal sin. So like, why even bother having fun having sex? Just use the boring, like standard, like status quo, conformist, conservative stuff that's been around since the 40s or the 50s. And again, big piggy backing off of that one. Number 59. Being a Molly Mormon, of course Dr. Fraud throws shade on tattoos and piercings by implying needles are reused. Body modification has come so far over the last few decades, and it's been in the West now in like modern studios for almost 50 years. We just celebrated, if you saw my recent community post, June 28th is International Piercing Day because that's the birthday of Jim Ward, the granddaddy of modern piercing in the West. He turned 83 this year, so happy birthday, Jim. We owe so much to you for like bringing piercing into the public eye and helping it to become as mainstream as it was. But anyway, I don't even think back in the like 70s and 80s when his studio, The Gauntlet, out in LA was like still in business. It was a pioneer in the industry. I don't think even then, I'm pretty sure they were not reusing needles. Like the only people who would be actually reusing needles for piercings or like what prison quality tattoos would be like the people you go to at a party. Oh, or in the high school bathroom, or you're doing it yourself in your own bedroom because, oh, I'm not going to spend $50 or $100 or whatever to go to a nice studio and have like high quality jewelry or even some basic like quality titanium non-anodized. It's only like $15, $20 or whatever. Oh, I'm just going to do it all myself. And I don't care. I don't have like sterile equipment or my friend can do it. Oh, I'm just going to sit on the toilet of the high school bathroom and get my, septum pierced or whatever, my eyebrow or like my tongue or whatever like that. That does not happen. Like, I mean, you have to fear diseases with that. Sorry, not sorry. That disgusting gun they use at the mall. They now call it a piercing device or whatever other like news speak. That's not really what it is. It's a piercing gun. It's just that does carry diseases because it has blood. You can't sanitize or sterilize it, so you should not be getting your ears or any other body part pierced with a gun at like Claire's or Piercing Pagoda or any of those other stores. But a real reputable piercing and tattoo studios these days, and probably for as long as they've been around, they do not reuse needles. And that just really makes me angry as someone who absolutely loves body modification, seeing it still misrepresented by these like conservative know-nothings in this day and age. Don't talk smack about something if you don't actually know what it is or you're not familiar with it. Don't pretend you're an authority. That just so makes me so freaking angry. And they don't even reuse markers or gloves. And the same goes for reputable tattoo studios. Number 60. Using naloxone 9 spermicide with condoms is no longer promoted by health authorities. They increase UTIs in women, have a shorter shelf life, and haven't shown any scientific evidence of being more likely to prevent pregnancy and STDs. And I don't believe spermicide in general is recommended anymore either. Again, that's something straight out of the 1950s. Oh, you pretty much had to use spermicide back in the day when a diaphragm was pretty much the only reliable or mainstream, easy to get form of contraceptive, but now you don't really need spermicides because condoms do the trick well enough when they are used properly and consistently every single time and they are stored properly. But again, this woman apparently definitely thought sex was a mortal sin, or whatever the Mormon version of mortal sin is. So why even bother like educating myself about it, or having fun with sex, or learning about it voluntarily, or thinking about it with anything that's not like 100% shame and disgrace and humiliation? Just say, oh, it's terrible, you should still have sex like it's the 50s with these outdated methods of birth control. I'm surprised she doesn't mention diaphragms at all in the back matter. Number 61. We now have post-exposure prophylaxis that can prevent HIV if started within 72 hours of a potential exposure. Now, mind, this is not a 100% guarantee you will not get HIV or AIDS, but it does, better safe than sorry. Even if you do, God forbid, get AIDS or HIV, at least you tried, and it does have a pretty high success rate if you do it like religiously and you start it soon enough after a potential risk. And obviously you shouldn't rely on that if you're regularly having unsafe sex and being potentially exposed to HIV. Then you need to like reevaluate your lifestyle. But it is, a very like high quality like potential guarantee you might not get HIV AIDS. And again, like she should have updated the back matter with that material, or if it I'm not sure like when exactly off the top of my head it started, but that's definitely outdated now, saying, oh, there's no way to prevent it when there obviously is right now. Number 62. I think most people understand safe sex isn't 100% safe. There's always a margin of error, and accidents do happen. For example, some women's bodies apparently are so fertile they want to be pregnant even when they've had their tubes tied. The body starts healing up or forming new passageways for the sperm to meet the eggs, or even though they have like a scarred uterine lining or something, they still end up conceiving like 5-7 times, whatever, because their body just has other ideas than like they thought they were destined to have, or they personally wanted their own like size and spacing of the family. That's why many people now use the term safer sex. Number 63. There's no longer an automatic 30% chance of pregnant women passing HIV onto their babies, thankfully. If one's viral load is very low and medications are taken religiously throughout pregnancy, there's only a very small chance of the baby being born with HIV. Women don't even need C-sections anymore if they have HIV when they're pregnant, unless their viral load is very high or unknown. Obviously, then you definitely want to get them the C-section. However, breastfeeding is still discouraged, and it's a whole other, off-topic thing for another video. Unfortunately, in the developing world, women don't really have access to like modern, updated formula like we do in the West. And you should not be making your own formula. Like, sorry, not sorry. The Weston A. Price Foundation has this really disgusting, like unsafe, pretended formula recipe with like raw liver and raw goat milk and all this other dangerous stuff you should only buy from the store actual formulas. But in the developing world of women who have HIV and have had babies, they also, in addition to just not having like modern, like reliable formula, they also don't have a clean water supply, which is another reason many people hate how Nestle is like relentlessly promoting itself in the third world and making women not breastfeed at all, even if they don't have any diseases, because many times the formula will become contaminated when it's mixed with the disgusting, unsafe local water, which has like malaria and typhoid and stuff like that. But it's obviously a thing for a whole other video. But again, like women who do have HIV or AIDS and give birth and the baby does not thankfully get born with the disease, they're still discouraged from breastfeeding whenever possible. Number 64. Dr. Fraud cites a group called Planned Parenting, not Planned Parenthood, Planned Parenting. I had to Google around a while to find them. Planned Parenting Association is in the Solomon Islands. Like, how obscure did she have to get to avoid interacting with accurate medical information? That kind of calls into question everything she says, unless I know absolutely for sure it's true, because she's the woman who cried, the girl who cried wolf. Like, she's lied so many times and been demonstrated to have lied. I just can't believe anything she says unless proven otherwise. Number 65. Dr. Fraud really amps up the fear-mongering in the back matter. You can give AIDS to everyone, and you'll automatically die quickly, so you need to live in a state of perpetual fear and paranoia. People with HIV and AIDS need to be sensible, of course, but it's not like every little thing is a potential health risk. It's not like this book was written in 1985. You don't save teens from getting AIDS by terrifying them with grisly descriptions of rectal ulcers, incontinence, eye infections, kidney infections, and emaciation or their hair falling out. You save them by talking about safer sex, healthy relationships, self-respect, red flags and potential partners, not immediately trusting everyone they meet, and having a reliable adult to talk with. You also need to provide access to condoms and sexual health care and increase the funding for all of these things. Teens deserve honest, accurate information, not bad Mormon propaganda disguised as a true story. I am so disgusted I ever fell for this garbage when I was 14 years old and even cried at the end both times because I thought, oh, this poor sweet girl died of AIDS and she was raped by an older man who preyed on her. This is completely made up. I'm just still so angry to this day. I was emotionally manipulated by this fraud who should burn in hell. And I also found the thing I had mentioned in a previous video about how one of Nancy's doctors said he wished he could have been more than a doctor to her. I mean, of course, this doctor is completely made up, as are all of the other doctors in Dr. Fraud's books, but I had mistakenly thought it was in the front or back matter, and I found it towards the end of the actual book, and it's just so creepy. I thought it had been taken out in the new edition because I hadn't found it yet, so I was just mistaken about where it was. So anyway, here it is. She's on the phone talking to him long distance from Idaho. First, Dr. S. told me how much he loved me and missed me, and how he wishes we could just be friends instead of doctor and patient. Then he listened patiently to everything I had to say. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is just if you live in a little Mayberry small town like Nancy apparently does. But how common is it for doctors to tell patients they love them? And that was a really, really creepy, sketchy thing to put in the book. Maybe in Morgbot world it's like that. Thank you very much for listening, and please leave me a comment. Let me know if I got anything wrong myself during this video, if any of the things I thought were misinformation are actually correct information, or other misinformation about AIDS you noticed if you yourself have read this book, or just general medical misinformation in general you have found when reading any other books. What's your experience with literary frauds in general? Are you familiar with this huge fraud in particular? And please consider subscribing if you haven't already. I'll be back with a whole bunch more videos about this crap, general things wrong with this book, as well as why the whole Nancy Collin relationship just does not feel realistic on any level. It's more like a trope and a plot device to give her AIDS, and just so many other things wrong with this. I'm also planning to compile a whole post/video about all the disgusting, annoying, over-the-top, teeth-gratingly annoying, cloying mommykins worship in this book, all the obvious Mormon references no non-Mormon would actually be using in her diary, and just so many other things, and also as well many quotes where Nancy is a judgmental, you know what, oh, I would have become one of the school whores passing AIDS around like HIV if I hadn't met my wonderful pro-abstinence boyfriend, and just a terrible, acting like an 80-year-old Mormon instead of a normal teenage girl. So look forward to those videos. I'm putting them all in my new playlist, which I recently created, all about the vile fraud, Dr. Beatrice Sparks, I think I called it. So see you guys again very soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.